Hi all, it's Dave here. A couple of weeks ago, at least at the time of me starting to write this, Shannon Q released a video of her speech from Better 2022. Better is a conference organized by the Atheist Network Group, or TANG for short. The title of the video, and I'm assuming the speech also, is Are You in the Atheist Community? I'll leave links to the video, Shannon Q's YouTube channel, and Tang's channel in the description of the video for anyone wanting to view it. If you're not already subscribed to Shannon Q's channel, then I highly recommend rectifying that by immediately subscribing to her channel. The speech itself is very interesting, and it covers a lot of ideas surrounding the idea of the atheist community. Ideas such as why we identify with certain groups, group cohesion and why they cohere, common goals, values, and much, much more. Shannon Q also discusses Bruce Tuckman's forming, storming, norming, and performing model of team cohesion. There is also talk about accepting and bringing others into the fold of the atheist community. Like I said, it's a very interesting talk with lots of food for thought in it. Which sort of brings me to the point of this video. If you are hoping for a critique of Shannon Q's talk, then I'm afraid you'll be a little disappointed. Instead, this video is simply discussing some of my own feelings and motivations when it comes to the atheist and skeptic community, and relating it to some of the things that Shannon talks about in her speech. Most people who know me also know that I have plenty to say about the atheist and skeptic community, sometimes good things and sometimes critical things. This ranges from the average atheist and skeptic on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube to bigger names like Matt Dillahunty and Aaron Ra. This doesn't win me a lot of friends, obviously, and it often gets me called a troll, it gets me insulted, it gets me yelled at, it gets me blocked, and much more. These things don't particularly bother me. It's to be expected. However, I'm not a troll. As Shannon mentioned in her speech, there are groups that we belong to automatically, even if we don't necessarily identify with them. A non-smoker belongs to the larger group of non-smokers, just as someone who enjoys watching football belongs to the larger group of football fans. And yes, someone who does not collect stamps belongs to the larger group of non-stamp collectors. These are just simple sets of people that have a particular attribute. By this connection alone, I belong to the larger group of both skeptics and atheists. But I also go further than this group of just connection. It's also mentioned in the speech that we join groups that we identify with. This means that I not only have a connection to the larger group simply by virtue of the label, I consider myself as part of the group by virtue of how I identify and choose to join this larger group. Not only that, I choose to join these groups because I also share values and goals with them. Values and goals such as promoting critical thinking, skepticism, better epistemic frameworks, the normalization of atheism, the questioning of religion, and much more. There are also a lot of values that I don't share with others in the community too, of course. Many of these goals and values I don't share seem to be separate from the actual goals and values of skepticism itself, though. They are what I would consider personal disagreements rather than disagreements about the value of skepticism and the goal of promoting critical thinking. So these should not really affect me when it comes to wanting to be a part of the skeptic community. At best, these are just encouragements to become involved in discussion with others in the skeptic community. At worst, it means that there are those in the skeptic community I do not and will not get along with due to a clash of personal values. Yet, I find myself unable to cohere with the skeptic community itself. The simplest answer here, of course, is just that perhaps it's just me and my personality that stops others in the skeptic community and me from cohering. It's me that's causing others in the skeptic community to mock me, get angry at me, and block me. And to that I will say, yep, I absolutely agree it is my behavior that causes these reactions. However, I would also argue that my behavior shouldn't be causing these reactions and these blocks. Let's have a look at an example and see why. In her speech, Shannon discusses trivial arguments and mentions as one of those trivial arguments the definition of atheism. Now, it may come as a shock to many that I somewhat agree with Shannon here. I mention in my video, Atheism, A Tale of Two Usages, that arguing over the true definition of atheism has no real value and only further helps divide the atheist community. Not only does it have no real value and further divides the atheist community, it is also an argument that can never be true. Arguing there is one true definition of atheism is an argument that is immediately lost and based on a false premise. That false premise is that there can be one true definition of atheism. However, I don't think that arguing with those claiming there is a singular correct definition has no value or is a trivial argument. Those calling themselves skeptics should not find it to have no value either, nor should they think it a trivial argument, for it is, in fact, promoting skepticism and critical thinking. Though the target may be the in-group rather than the out-group, skepticism and critical thinking should not and does not apply only to the out-group. Not only does it apply to the in-group of those considering themselves to be part of the skeptic community, it ought to apply more, for that is the group that is arguing for the promotion of better critical thinking and skepticism. Yet it becomes more apparent that there is a large amount of unquestionable dogma that exists within the skeptic and atheist community. Being skeptical of and challenging that dogma will get you othered by those that exist within the skeptic community. These things seem to be something completely at odds with the promotion of skepticism and critical thinking. And it is this that gets me blocked and mocked by those calling themselves skeptics and promoters of logic, reason, and critical thinking. Another example of this can be seen when it comes to the arguments of somebody like Tim O'Neill. Tim can often be found to be challenging the bad historical understandings and arguments made by skeptics and atheists. And for this he is dogpiled, mocked, and blocked also. Again, this is something that should be welcomed by the very people that mock, dogpile, and block him. After all, he is applying the very critical thinking and skepticism they promote to their claims. Yet, just as with claims about there being a singular definition of atheism, the dogma seems to be more important here than whether or not it is true or is the result of good critical thinking. So, from my perspective at least, the coherence of the skeptic community is not one based on these stated common goals of furthering better critical thinking and furthering better skepticism. For turning these common goals back onto the claims made by those belonging to the skeptic community, and by extension the atheist community, will get you ostracized from those very communities, as will questioning larger well-known personalities within those communities. Many in the skeptic and atheist communities accept things uncritically and unquestioningly, so long as it is popular within those communities, or target certain outgroups in an unfavoring manner. Instead, it seems to me that the coherence of the skeptic and atheist community is one that is also based on uncritically accepting certain claims, certain dogmas, and saying the right things about common outgroups, as well as not challenging those dogmas, claims, and arguments. The ideology of the skeptic community plays a greater part in the coherence of the group than does the goal of promotion of critical thinking and skepticism. And this is fine, of course. If that is the shared goal of the community, then that is the shared goal of the community. However, those in the community should be more honest that anti-theism is the goal of the skeptic and atheist community, rather than the promotion of critical thinking, skepticism, logic, reason, and the many other things that they claim to be promoting. All of this should not detract from how insightful and valuable Shannon's speech is, though. It was very well thought out, very informative, and a very interesting speech. And as I said, it gave me a lot of food for thought, and it should give anyone listening to it much food for thought too. My thoughts will obviously differ from those that exist within those communities, and I expect much of what I say here to be dismissed by those in that community. As I stated, my goals and values as a skeptic clearly differ from those within the community, and make cohesion to the atheist and skeptic community problematic, sadly. Such is life, though. Oftentimes we find ourselves unable to cohere with groups that seem to promote the same ideals, goals, and values as we hold. For now, though, I'll continue on as I do. Hopefully those that have spent the time to listen to this video will understand a little better as to why I challenge the many bad arguments and claims of those in the skeptic and atheist community, and also why I am so disappointed every time I see those in the communities blocked for challenging those bad claims and dogmas that exist within those communities.